as you grow up, as people grow up in an environment of stability and affluence, it gets harder to change. We become more accustomed to the status quo, and it becomes harder to adapt and change. This is true for all of us. We all know this, right? Which is why the Chinese say, "富不过三代." So we all know the journey will not be easy. But I will do everything I can to make sure that Singapore remains the exception. Over the past decade, we've seen many examples of fraying social compacts and more fractured societies. Fortunately, in Singapore, our situation is not as dire as in many of these countries. Economically, we are in better shape than most. But we find ourselves now at a crossroads in our nation's journey. All of us had expected a strong recovery from COVID-19, but now we have flown into stronger headwinds. We have a war raging in Europe, fueling global inflation and possibly a recession, if not stagflation. We face rising geopolitical tensions, especially between the US and China, disrupting supply chains and ushering in a more dangerous and bifurcated world. Some of you may ask me, what is it that I want to see in the Singapore of tomorrow? And I would say, I want to see a Singapore where opportunities are open to all, no matter who they are or what their background is, where all are assured of access to basic needs like education, healthcare, and housing, and everyone can chart their own path to live a fulfilling and dignified life. Where we can build the best home, not just for ourselves, but for generations of Singaporeans yet unborn. Where all Singaporeans contribute their fair share to the common good, with those who are fortunate to do well in life, willingly contributing more to uplift their fellow citizens with less. Where every man and woman is valued, every child treasured, and every senior respected. This is my hope for the future. Everyone knows we have long relied on open and free markets to grow the economy, and that must remain the case. But we also know that left unchecked, the workings of the free market can lead to excessive competition and rising inequalities. And that's why we have not left Singaporeans to fend for themselves or allowed outcomes to be decided by market forces alone. People debate about this a lot, but meritocracy is still the best way to organize our society. But we also know that meritocracy has its downsides. The rich can give their children more opportunities. Those who have succeeded by their merit naturally seek to pass on their advantages to their children by any means possible. So there is a risk of privilege being entrenched across generations. We cannot abandon meritocracy, but I believe we can improve it and make ours a more open and compassionate meritocracy. This means respecting all, including those in lower income jobs who keep society going in so many ways. So let us all recognize them, treat them with dignity and respect, treat them kindly, never turn up our noses at anyone, and pay them well. Everyone, every Singaporean must know and feel that they will not be left to fend for themselves when times are hard. And that's why we will study how we can do more to help our workers tide over difficult times, and how we can better provide for our growing number of seniors. Of course, all this will require more resources too, and that's why we must also collectively determine how much more the government should spend and on what, as well as how much more our people are prepared to pay to fund this spending. Crucially, a strong social compact must provide not just for this generation's needs, but it must also provide across generations. Maybe I'll just close with a few words on what will be different, because a lot of times after certainly my appointment, many people ask, what's going to be different under your leadership? Maybe it's on your minds, but you're too polite to ask me that question. I would say every leader has to adapt to the circumstances and needs of society of their time. And likewise for me, I'm quite sure and I'm very certain that it will be different challenges, different needs, different society, and my leadership has to adapt and adjust to it. There is one thing I'm very clear in terms of my priority, which is that it is not just to lead, but ultimately to serve. As I have for 25 years in public service, as I have in the last 2 years trying to navigate Singapore through COVID-19, and as I will continue to help Singapore and all Singaporeans succeed in our next phase of development. And that's why we are embarking on this Forward Singapore exercise, because we want Singapore always to be a country for all citizens, not just for a few. So it just gets more and more challenging because it's like climbing a mountain. The higher up you go, the air gets thinner and it gets harder and harder. So we all know the journey will not be easy, but I will do everything I can to make sure that Singapore remains the exception. I can't guarantee forever, but certainly in my lifetime, that we will ensure Singapore's prosperity continues, and that prosperity is shared amongst all Singaporeans, and we can do this for many more generations to come.